A good number of years ago now, by divine providence, quite unexpectedly, I found myself singing the old Mass at the altar where Blessed Columba Marmion had celebrated for 3 years. The chapel where they were, as a community in exile, is still there, in part of a mansion at Enniscorthy, and it was quite a moving experience. The chapel was unchanged, the altar was the same. It was something similar to the experience that around the same period I had, again rather out of the blue, celebrating at the altar made by Blessed John Henry Newman in the embryonic foundation in St. Stephen's Green, the present university church, which never finished really what it should have been, an oratory. But it was the same altar, in that case of Our Lady, slightly to the left, and also it was, I was told by the priest, the chalice of the Holy Man, and also possibly the ancient vestments, because they gave us the old ones, celebrating in the old rite. These two occasions, fairly close to each other in time, were moments when, as it were, time stood still. One was in contact with the same power that had made holy these two giants. They had a different spirituality. John Henry Newman, unexpectedly, was fascinated by the rather baroque atmosphere of the oratory as he found it in Rome, and the church that he built, initially in Birmingham, and then with the help of William Faber in London itself, the Brompton Oratory, are Italianate. Big marble columns came down the water from Massa Carrara to build the oratory. But of course he brought in an English version of it, bound to be the case with the Oxford link. With regard to Columba Marmion, he could have become a good but hidden priest in the area of Clonliffe, where he started, not too far from here. But following the impulse of grace, he went afar, as did Newman, need kindly light, and the consequences were great. Indeed, in formation in France, I was given to study this great author, because he's still a staple diet in the monastic life, the great trilogy. And reading him, one is at the heights of Benedictine spirituality, based on the interior. The monk lives inside himself. Christ is the life of the soul. But in his case, he developed and handed on a very dense spirituality which was specifically Benedictine, and therefore specifically centered on worship, the prime object of the monk's existence. He reproduces on earth, in choir, the praise that we cannot see or hear of the angels in heaven. A life just spent gratuitously, rather like these candles here before us on the altar, consuming themselves as living sacrifices in light and warmth. And so that is its own justification. Just as the Heavenly Father has the right to create a vast number of angels, hugely numerous, astronomically numerous, gratuitously for praise, so too he has the right to call out of society souls of gratuitous praise, who have no need to justify their existence before men, because it doesn't operate on the human. It can, as a secondary effect, but it's purely gratuitous and only has a sense in that higher realm of praise which is the due of the Supreme Creator. And therefore we see in his spirituality a very high level where nothing is spared. And he also indicates that the specific spirituality that he is forming the brethren to as abbot in his conferences and these books is one which does not need to look over the shoulder to other orders, and insists there is a self-sufficiency, there is in that particular case a Benedictine perfection, and it should not be needing to look over its shoulder. So too, each state of life has its specific perfection. St. François de Sales insists that one has to find the perfection of one's state. He mentions the case of a bishop who might have an itch to be a Carthusian. It would be out of place. Each state has its specific sanctity and duty, and that's the one that we need to cultivate, for that's the one upon which we'll be judged. Having said that, all have one element in common, and it goes back precisely to this: Christ, the life of the soul. If one is living one's life in one's state of, whether it be marriage, or professional life, or student life, without that element of awareness and contact, without that focus on Christ, the life of the soul, on the invisible guest, then the danger is that one will only function and not be. But having said that, it can also exist in the monastic life. One can be very efficient, but not be on the level of contemplation. All is in function of that in the monastery, and if it doesn't happen, it's all rather superfluous. In the married life, the working life, there are very few structures and props. So we need to be aware. Time is passing. Birthdays and anniversaries are moments when we look at time passing. They are milestones, and one looks at the years passing. So it's important that one takes little breaks like this to look inside and see, is Christ the centre of my focus, or am I just functioning? Cor ad cor loquitur. Heart speaks to heart. Lines written after singing Mass in the Old Rite with Newman's own chalice at the altar in the Lady Chapel in the church built by him in Dublin. There are some moments marked with other things that are not made of earth, whose worth is such that unto wandering seconds something clings, which all the hours to be can calmly touch. I have stood there where stood a heart I know, and held that held a hand, still loud in poise. And I heard, holding high and bending low, in gestures old, of all the oldest noise. For silence is the language of this place, and hurriedness holds still. For there's a while for waste in halted haste beneath this face, that thou, my friend, dost see there where the smile is not of but an angel, but of him whom here, I here, thou too didst palp all dim.
Eventually, he saw Catholics in action. He saw them with what he calls a holy familiarity. He saw them in church, in simple, hidden churches, built here and there in hidden corners without any pride of place in society. But he saw what he had not seen before. People kissing statues and showing by their whole person that they were happy with the court of heaven. Lui ha per caso trovato la vita cattolica come era nel paese d'allora, in Inghilterra, nascosta in angoli di importanza secondaria. Vedeva una cosa mai vista nella sua vita, la santa familiarità. La gente semplice che baciava le statue, che avevano un istinto molto più forte che qualsiasi cosa che mai visto lui, e era già uno shock. Però il punto di cambiamento fu un momento storico, lo sappiamo dalla sua apologia, quando la Chiesa anglicana ha voluto mettere un vescovo per gli anglicani e tutti i protestanti in Terra Santa a Gerusalemme. The point of change was an intellectual wrestling with what was happening at the time when England, of course the Parliament, chose to place a bishop over Anglicans and all Protestants in where, of all places, Jerusalem, the Holy Land. And he saw the problem, because that was by excellence the place where St. James had been the first bishop. He could see the intellectual dilemma. It was the point. He went, as we know, to Rome. Therefore,